Greetings, social media land. This is Ted Victor, founder of the Broward Social Network. Today is Friday, June the 26th at approximately 10:40 in the morning. We have a guest on our platform by the name of Julian Placino. Julian Placino is a personal development trainer, among many other things. And I thought it would be appropriate to bring him to this platform to introduce him to you here in Florida so that you can learn about his many talents. Julian, welcome to the Broward Social Network.
Ted, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so introduce yourself in terms of what you do professionally. We have a friend in common by the name of Abe Nadimi, and I met Abe at a Les Brown workshop a few years ago. We were able to stay in touch, and we are like-minded individuals in terms of personal advancement, personal improvement, and inspiration. And so I came across you interviewing him, and I just thought it would have been great to be able to have a conversation with you about personal growth and what you add to your professional world. So introduce yourself, because I have quite a few questions for you.
Absolutely. And Abe is a great guy. Special shout out to him. He is an amazing talent for sure. So my name is Julian Placino. I am a speaker, a podcaster, and I do personal development training. My corporate background for the past 12 years has actually been in recruitment and staffing. So my job has been to see the unique talents in individuals and help them find the best opportunities in the marketplace. In 2016, I started my passion project, my podcast, The Pathways to Success, where I interview various leaders about their journeys to success. And that has led me to sponsorships, to getting picked up by a talent agency, to getting picked up by a speaking agency, and eventually building a consulting company, which replaced my income and set me on the path of full-time entrepreneurship, which I am on today.
Okay, that's a whole lot of information kind of fast forwarded. Do you mind me asking, how old are you, or is that inappropriate?
I'm 38.
Okay, you're fairly young. Where did this all start? Where did this all start? Do you have parents that said, you know what, Julian, go for the American dream, strive for better? Um, or did somebody inspire you? Did you read a book? Where did this all start? Because this magic that you're doing is not something that everybody is doing.
Well, honestly, when I graduated from college, all I really wanted was I guess, perception of success, right? Which in my mind was working in a skyscraper in downtown and wearing a suit and tie to work. Well, luckily, I actually got that, and that's kind of what led to my corporate career. But around 2008, when the financial crisis happened, I found myself laid off. And for me, I was like, wow, I thought I did everything right. I went to school, I got a job, but now I found myself laid off. And at that point, I started thinking about, man, I never want this to ever happen again. And I never wanted anyone to have any kind of claim on my time nor my assets. And that inevitably led me down the path of entrepreneurship. The book that really changed my mind was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which really changed my mind about how someone can create an income. And that's
let's give credit. Pardon me for interrupting. Let's give credit to the author, Robert Kiyosaki. Robert Kiyosaki. Go ahead, continue.
Yes, absolutely. It was foundational to my development of an entrepreneur in terms of my mindset. Well, since then, I've tried so many different things to sort of achieve this financial freedom: network marketing, real estate, internet business. And they were all great experiences, but I never achieved any kind of great success with any of them. But only when I started to leverage whatever talents and abilities I had in a passion project without associating success to it, truly to the service of others, did my life start to change. And that's where the podcast came into being.
And how did you learn podcasting? Did you go to YouTube University like most of us?
Part of my big personal development philosophy is the acquisition of mentors. And for me, I just asked. For me, it was always kind of natural to look for someone who's achieved the result that I want to achieve, become their friend, learn how they did it, and then did it myself. And when I started asking people in my network, who do you know that has started a podcast? I was introduced to Jason Croft, who also knows Abe Nadimi, and he was the podcast host for Startup Dallas. And he showed me everything from how to host through Libsyn, all the recording equipment, how to format a show. That's how I learned the podcast, was finding a mentor.
I'm still not sure about this world, and that's one component of this interview. Uh, does podcast give you the visual like this, or is it just all audio?
It first started out just purely audio, and I actually have my setup back here. It's all straight audio, but now I do record video if I'm able to either do it by Zoom or do it in person, and I try to hit as many channels as I possibly can. But my main channels in terms of the podcast is iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, all the main podcast distribution channels.
Now, do those require subscriptions, or are those all free to be able to put out your content?
Yeah, so pretty much the only thing I pay for is my hosting, which is Libsyn. And through Libsyn, it puts it out to iTunes and all the other channels out there. And they're all free to apply to.
So Libsyn is the equivalent of Restream.
Maybe, I'm not too familiar with the streaming world. It's hosting. So all of my native files live in Libsyn, and then Libsyn distributes to the podcast channel platforms.
LIP?
Libsyn.
LYBSYN, Libsyn.
Okay. Yeah, Eisen Isaac B, Libsyn.
SYN. And so you started out probably as an unknown person, right? Who's Julian Placino in that world? And then over time, your following grew.
Yeah, I mean, I remember in the very beginning, I interviewed my sister, I interviewed my best friend. Given they had really remarkable stories, I didn't really have anyone to interview, but I started to build a critical mass and started to produce content. And it sort of became a way for people to get to know who I was. And they saw that I was sincere in my content creation. And since probably episode 10, I've gotten almost 90% of all of my podcast guests through referrals and word of mouth.
And how big would you say is your following now?
Well, in LinkedIn is my main social following. I have close to 14,000 followers. I actually get more engagement there than all of my social platforms combined. That being said, every time I produce a piece of content, I distribute across all channels.
You're able to put your podcast on LinkedIn?
I use LinkedIn as an advertising mechanism to point them to the podcast.
I get it. Okay, so a little bit about the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. How do you define destiny? I really have a different question connected to that, but I'm prefacing with how do you define destiny?
I suppose the ultimate fulfillment of what you are supposed to become, whatever you believe that is for you.
Okay, very good. So now here's really the main question, and a loaded question and possibly unfair, right? Do you believe we are where we are because of our own doing purely, or is there some sort of invisible world that's related to luck and time and place that will determine where we are? Because we have to address the elephant in the room. We have a pandemic now, and you cannot put on the news without hearing about the economy. You've experienced it. There are people who have lost their livelihood, maybe people who owned restaurants, people who owned beauty salons. They're going to have to do some serious self-evaluation and reinvention, right? So, and then, we have the Black Lives Matter movement. We have people who are being shot as a result of police brutality. I'm curious to see philosophically, and this is related to destiny, this is related to where you are now, this is where you are increasingly going in the future, right? Yeah. Are we purely responsible for where we are, or is there some sort of invisible energy out there that we don't have any control over that is going to make us poor, that is going to make us miserable, that is going to make us without a job?
So I didn't know it was going to get very deep and philosophical. You asked me a personal question. Right. I will give you a personal response.
Right.
I am a Christian, and I believe in God. And I believe that he either directly affects or at least permits certain things to happen. I think the question is about adversity. And when I look at these things and trials and hardships, I think metaphor is a good way to sort of look at things. Like this idea of pruning. Right? Or do you garden? Do you know much about? I don't know anything about pruning until I heard this metaphor. But on the exterior, whenever something is pruned, it looks painful, like a limb is actually being cut off. But from what I understand from gardeners, they do it for a very specific reason. Whenever you prune, you either, number one, you clear away the dead, in other words, getting rid of what's no longer useful. And when you do that, more sunshine is actually able to hit the plant, which allows for more growth. Number two, I had recent experience with this. I recently bought a house and I had the trees actually trimmed away from the roof. And then the landscaper said, you know, you can actually change the direction of the tree's growth by pruning it. So perhaps sometimes adversity is a way of God, of destiny.
Say that again, please, slowly. That is pretty powerful. That's some very powerful stuff. Say that again. You can change the direction that the tree is growing by pruning it. That is excellent. Say that again, because I'm going to share this information with my students, which are high schoolers, and that is very, very powerful, because really what you're doing is talking about whether or not you know where you're going to be tomorrow or 10 years from now, but you can set yourself up for success, which is very powerful. So talk about that again.
100%. This, what I'm sharing, comes from a book called Secrets of the Vine. But one of the other reasons why gardeners prune is because you can literally change the direction of the tree's growth as a result of pruning, right? So we talked about the first piece, which was discarding what is no longer useful. The second element of the metaphor is you can change the direction of the tree's growth. And the last piece is trees are pruned to produce an immediate fruit. But in order for to do that, you have to sort of inflict this kind of pain or adversity to it by pruning it. So discard, change, grow is how I see things when it comes to adversity and facing challenges in your life.
Discard, change, grow. Okay, and pruning would be what? Cutting like the side little branches or something, because you talked about pain.
Right, so cutting the branches. By cutting the branches, which on the exterior looks like a painful thing for the tree, it actually has these three hidden benefits with intentionality for its benefit.
How do you think that applies to the economy? How do you think we can take that metaphor? And I understand what you're saying. And folks who will see this, the hundreds and thousands of people who will see this interview, will be able to understand this at different levels. I'd like to be able to give a battery of examples, because I think you're at a very sophisticated language and sophisticated information, which I appreciate and understand. However, I want my high school students who may be in the 9th grade or 10th grade to be able to understand what you're saying as well, because I think that with COVID-19 and so many people being unemployed and the high unemployment rate, people are going to have to economically prune themselves, right?
Sure. Yeah, I think the biggest example that I can talk about is the most recent one. I am known as a speaker. I speak at conferences, I speak at corporations. Therefore, a large part of my business is dependent on social gatherings. Within a period of 24 hours, probably in March, late March, all of my engagements were canceled. That equals revenue to me. I was scared and I was frightened, right? And this was certainly feeling a pruning event in my life. But what started to happen is I was forced to reinvent. And now I'm doing much more virtual events, doing speaking through the medium of through Zoom or through virtual platforms. And it's now actually allowing me to build a new curriculum and access clients where I'm no longer limited through my geography. So what I started to realize is that this is actually a good thing. Not only is it allowing me to distribute my message through different platforms, but I can access a larger audience. It's also given me time to work on my book. And what I realized as a speaker is I'm a problem solver. The only thing that has changed is the medium, is how I deliver that value, right? Because the truth is there's still so many problems to solve.
Right.
The way you do that, the how, is changing.
Where would you recommend someone starts? Let's just say And you may not call yourself a motivational speaker, but I'm motivated already. So you're a speaker and you're motivating me. So you're a motivational speaker. Where would one start? Is it just as simple to say the mindset? Because you are going to find the person that says, Julian, I've tried everything. I've tried everything. I've cut my diet. I've worked out. I can't lose weight. I save money. I can't be rich. Where does one start? Where does one start? Or is it kind of so unique per individual that they have to figure it out on themselves? Is there a guide that we can follow? Is there some type of plan that we can formulate for success?
So I really do believe it begins with self-awareness. So allow me to create the foundation of this perspective. My background has been in recruiting and staffing. Over the past 12 years, I've hired well over 400 top performers and coached thousands into successful employment. On the podcast, I've interviewed company founders, CEOs, New York Times bestselling authors, incredible leaders. Now, having had my own corporate and professional success, I can look at all these three lenses and tie one methodology together. And I believe it is through the process of stewardship. Stewardship is the discovery, the deployment, and development of our talents and our resources to serve and create value for others. But what I believe and have seen is that most people don't take the time to learn what their talents and their gifts are, right? And something I've seen all across the spectrum is the highest performers in the world have a great sense of self-awareness, specifically what their unique abilities are and how they can wield them to create value for others. That is 100% very clear to me. And I'm sure you've seen that too.
Can you give me some examples? The whole idea of self-awareness. And I actually studied medicine. I'm not a doctor, but I did study medicine. And when you say that, a couple of things come to mind physiologically. Like, for example, if you're in a moment of crisis, you are at a fight and somebody stabs you, you may not even feel that pain at that time because you're not even aware of it. So awareness to me involves the subconscious, the conscious, the spiritual, the environment. So talk to me about that, because I'm not necessarily sure it's that easy for certain people. Maybe for all of us, I'm not sure how easy that is.
It's not 100%. And I'll start with my personal example. I make a full-time living speaking and sharing ideas that I care about. But the truth is, I've been doing this for years for free. I didn't even know it as a thing. And all throughout, now looking through the lens of what I see now, I'm like, oh, this makes sense, because I was always getting invited to speak. So a good way of looking at self-awareness is, how do people see you? What do people typically ask your help for? What are the things that you kind of do naturally well, right? What are the activities that you invest into where time seems to just float away, right? You know, whenever I speak to children, Ted, I tell them this story about self-awareness. I say, just imagine you were born a Formula One race car, but you were born into a family of minivans. Your life would not make sense. Your peers, your family would say, why are you always in a hurry? Why are your tires so wide? Why do you drink so much gasoline? But the second that you step onto a racetrack, your life will never be the same. That is what I personally experienced when it came to finally discovering, and maybe even more importantly, accepting the things that I was good at, because I can then now pursue the kinds of opportunities that were well tailored to my shape.
Wait. Let me get this down, because I'm taking notes. Accepting the things that you're naturally good at, and then maybe those natural talents can then become marketable?
Become marketable. You can use them to help other people, right? So part of my story also is that I got picked up by a talent agency. So people pay me to be on camera, people pay me to say things, people pay me to use my image. I had no clue that was a thing, right? But through this idea of personal branding, putting myself out there, people started to pay attention to whatever it was that I was building. And I wouldn't have known that if the market didn't make me aware of it. But I think it also starts with the self-awareness, right? And doing something that you truly enjoy. You know, Steve Jobs said something so amazing. He said something to the effect that don't deny your passion because you sort of intuitively already know what it is that you're going to become. And for me, I think the acceptance piece about the discovery of your talents is very important because I absolutely had so much imposter syndrome about it. People kept telling me I was
Imposter,
so, yes,
imposter syndrome.
because people kept telling me I was so good at this one particular thing and I would never believe them, right? I would pretend like I was just being self-deprecating, but in my mind, I doubted myself. But as soon as I started to really accept it and then use it, and that's the key, you must use it to help other people, then you start to carve out your own sort of unique pathway to success. And I believe this, and I've seen it so many times.
You okay? So you said that people sought you out, but obviously you had to have been visible for people to seek you out, right? I wouldn't have known about you if it wasn't for Abe. So how did people find you?
So you will probably not see anything on me on social media before 2016 because I didn't like it. I thought it was all about vanity. I thought it was like a self-promotion game, but
Mhm.
only till I had something of value to share, specifically the podcast, that you start seeing this social footprint emerge. But what starts to happen, and I'm sure you've already experienced this, a personal brand starts to come about. What people have referred to as my personal brand is this body of work that I created, the 173 episodes, 300 hours worth of long form content. It became a way for people to see who I was and what I did without me having to explain it. And that is a real application in terms of marketing and business development and growing awareness of who you were. That's how people started to find me. And now it's like I get invited to speak all over the country because of this social footprint. I get my coaching clients, my corporate clients, all because of this thing that lives online. That's how people find me. That's, and quite literally, something also that people don't really discuss that often in terms of having a podcast or a platform like this. It's the best networking tool I've ever seen. It has given me a reason to reach out to, befriend, and get to know incredible people because my platform is not about me. It's about sharing the thought leadership of that individual. But much like what's happening right now, after you and I create a piece of content with the intentionality to share it with others, you and I are going to become friends.
Right.
It's the best
Absolutely.
networking tool I've ever seen. And that's why I say that everyone who, regardless of who you are, should become a publisher of some sorts, whether it's your corporate brand or individual.
That's very powerful. And I have to, this is live and people are going to see this, so I have to somehow maintain. I really want to do some type of a cartwheel here because I understand what you're saying. Now, when you're invited to speak,
Mhm.
are those folks wanting you to speak about what they expect that they have seen on social media about you, or do they say, "Hey, Julian, I want you to talk about astrology. I want you to talk about physics." Do they give you what they want you to talk about, or do they expect you to do what they know that you already do?
It depends. People have kind of an idea of what I speak about. I speak about personal branding, about leadership, about stewardship, about content creation. My background is in recruiting. So there's kind of these baseline topics people ask me to speak about. So usually they see a piece of content of mine and then reach out to me based on that. But typically that leads up to a conversation with the decision maker or conference organizer so I can then tailor fit my messaging to the needs of that particular audience.
And if you don't mind me asking, do they offer you a price, or you write your own ticket?
So I have a speaking agent. So part of my journey is that I was signed by WCD Speakers, a global speaking agency. So now my agent negotiates my fees on my behalf.
So does he or she also look for opportunities for you?
Yes. So she has been doing this, I think, for 7 or 8 years and has built relationships um, with conference organizers and corporations. But we work together. So I generate a number of inbound leads just because of the stuff that I do. And when that happens, I learn about what they're looking for. And when it comes down to sort of negotiating the price, I have Waleem, she's my speaker agent, handle all that because I want to focus on creating great content while she handles sort of the business end for that. So I like to work with people who can sort of complement my gifts, and she does that very well.
She chose you or you chose her?
So I was introduced to her by someone I had on the podcast, right? And we now share the same speaking agent.
Okay, that's pretty amazing. There's that famous book, The Secret,
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
um, about and the law of attraction and so forth. Talk to us about synergy. Talk to us about environment. Talk to us about, and you already have, by the way, but I still would like to be able to flesh it out in a different words so that we can capture the widest audience possible. Talk to us about, and this is also particularly thinking about my students who are high schoolers, about thinking about who do you spend your time with? Who is around you? Are they moving you forward? Are they moving you backward? So how powerful is your environment? How powerful is your company?
Incredibly important.
Say
So
that again, please. And I owe you a digital hug, man. I owe you a digital hug.
100%.
Humongous,
Yeah,
humongous. And I hate to say it, don't waste your time with people who are not bringing value to your life, right? Don't waste your time. If I'm not going to make you a better you, dude, hang up.
yeah.
Hang up. I mean, does that make sense or does that sound selfish?
No, 100%. So what are the sayings? Show me the average of you are the average of the 5 people you hang around most. Show me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are.
We say that in
Net
Spanish,
worth
right?
is equal to your net worth. Why are there so many ways to say the same thing? It is because it is true. Be very careful of the people you spend your time with, because truly they are either making you better or making you worse. There is no in between.
No in between. That's scary. No in between. Oh my gosh. So what do you do on a daily basis? Do you decide, okay, Ted Victor, I'm going to speak to him, or I'm not going to speak to him? Do you decide, John Doe, my neighbor next door, I'm not going to speak to him? What do you do? Is that a mental exercise? Like you literally go down your list, John Doe number one, what value does he bring in? Is this a guy that just kind of sits on the sidewalk and smokes cigarettes all day? Am I going to, spend time with him? Or do we take a chance? And even though we probably feel or think or perceive that the person does not bring value to our lives, but do we take a chance to try to inspire that person?
I think it depends. I do a lot of things through association and through referral. The truth is that I get so many invitations to come speak on a platform. The reason why I connected with you is because we both know Abe, and I really like and I trust Abe, and I know anyone who he associates with is someone of great caliber and value.
Awesome,
Absolutely,
awesome,
100%
awesome,
validated, right?
awesome, 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 awesome. I so respect that because, like you said, and I don't know if I'm there yet, but there probably will be a time. Well, there've been times I've been invited to do certain things or be on certain places, and I said, I don't know if I really want to be there. So,
Yeah.
and I'll be honest with you, there's a part of me that feels guilty about that. I feel a little bit elitist, for the lack of better words. You understand?
I do. And part of like the invitation for interviews is I get a lot of speaking invitations as well, right? So I try to look for, like, there's 3 reasons why I do it. Is there a business opportunity? Is there a distribution opportunity? And is there just a way that I can serve and create value? Because first and foremost, something that I learned is that whenever I just only seek money to do an opportunity, it is almost 100% of the time a failure, Ted. I'm telling you. But when I'm doing something, because I know I can create value and help at least one person doing it, I feel 100% congruent about accepting a fee for it. Because I'm now in alignment. I'm doing the stewardship, right? It's like I knew I was a strong communicator, and because of that, I can create value through messaging, through ideas, through storytelling. And one of the most important words, I had an emotional reaction when I heard this word. I've come to really like etymology, the study of the origin of words, right? And a lot of times people say that I am inspiring. Inspire is Latin, spirar, and that means to breathe.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
In implies into. And when you inspire someone, you breathe new life into them.
That's right.
And
That's
for
right.
me, every time I can conduct an interview or speak to an audience, if I am truly breathing life into people, I need to do that for the rest of my life.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Very, very powerful. You're breathing life to me right now. The whole imposter syndrome, I have to kind of take a look at that and quite a few things that you mentioned. All right. So there are a couple of elephants in the room. We've mentioned COVID-19 and economic rediscovery, reinvention. There's another elephant in the room, and you're welcome to say, I don't want to talk about that. I will love you regardless, and so forth. Can we talk a little bit about race in America? Where do we stand in America today? Because there's the Black Lives Movement, and as a scientist, I know that scientifically there's just one human race. And scientifically, I do know that it's the environment that causes you and I to look different. However, there are these artificial cultural context, socio-political context that certain societies have created called race. Being African American, being Asian American, does that impact our professional world? Does that impact how we navigate ourselves in terms of growth, professional growth, and how we are received by the society and by the community?
I'll start with this perspective because I have a few. So first off, I cannot explain the suffering, right? And there certainly does seem to be some things that need to sort of be fixed structurally. That being said, I will speak from the view of a recruiter, where I have to interview thousands to find hundreds, right? And I can tell you this, at least in my own experience, I didn't care what you look like, if you were male or female, black or white, as long as you were the best person for the job, based on the results, you were the one getting it. Now, I am seeing through this view, filtering it through my lens, that certain roles do skew a kind of a certain direction. So for me, whenever I'm invited to speak on this topic, I say that your ability to add value is the great equalizer. Because if you can be of service and you can demonstrate based on results and credibility that you are the best person for the job, you can make the biggest impact. I've just seen that seems to tear away other social barriers. My second perspective is this, and honestly, it's weird that we're having this conversation because I never saw myself as a diversity speaker. And quite frankly, I was born in the Philippines, but came to the States when I was 3 years old. It's never really been a thing to be. But my mentor, who is the CEO of Social Venture Partners of Dallas, we had a conversation recently, and he says, Julian, how do you speak about race and ethnicity? And I was like, I don't ever speak about race and ethnicity, right? But then he drew out this story from me through his questioning. And I remembered when I was 6 years old. And I asked my mother, I said, Mom, when is my blonde hair going to come in? And of course, my mom was like, blonde, what are you talking about? Blonde hair. And I didn't get it. But after having that conversation, I started to realize at an early age was that I thought white people were more beautiful than me. That was truly the aesthetic that I desired. And overall, I thought white people were better than me, right? And I think what started to happen was this personality that you see started to develop. It became kind of a defense mechanism and then ultimately a competitive advantage that I used to serve me in my entire career. It was that kind of sort of fear of not being able to fit in that allowed me to create this personality of who I really am. But now, ever since then, Ted, I'll be very honest with you, my ethnicity has been an advantage, especially from a speaking perspective. I hear this all the time. Julian, when somebody sees me for the first time and hears me speak, they say that what comes out of me does not match what they see, whatever that means. And
whatever that means, whatever that means, it can mean many things, brother. It can mean many things.
Whatever it is, it serves me because I've been told it makes me an interesting and unique package, right? But it also, now having had this conversation even with you, it helps me realize that I could serve others with an ethnic background just by sharing that story.
Absolutely. Very, very powerful. And we've all have, Toni Morrison talks about it in her book when she wrote her book, The Bluest Eye. So, we've all have had this experience because there is this subliminal battery of imagery in this country of what beauty is. Cover of magazines, commercials, and at the end of the day, you're never going to get a picture of all of America. You're going to have to pick a phenotype to represent the brand or that image. And they're not going to say that Asian's not beautiful, Black is not beautiful. However, the implication is if you're not on that screen, then you're not necessarily what's desired, right? By pop culture and by media. And so there's this battle that I actually had to go through because when I went to college at the age of 17, my major was math and computer science. And through a series of experiences, because I found out I was Black in college. You know, it's kind of like your parents didn't talk about it. You know, being from Latin America, we have a wide array of complexions. You know, we didn't really talk about it either, at least not intellectually, not academically. And so I had to, when I discovered Blackness, I had to change my major from math and computer science to history, African studies, so I could basically learn about where I come from, where I fit in. And then it led me to the greater path of finding about everybody. And you know, the silver lining is that every culture, Asian culture, African culture, European culture, every culture has experienced some degree of suffering, right? Every culture. So the Black Lives Matter is very real under the umbrella that all lives matter. You see, but what's great at this point, which I've never seen in my entire life, is that white folks are telling white folks that Black Lives Matter. Okay, so now there's a space in American culture, there's a space in American current events to be able to revisit whether or not I was welcomed at the table, whether or not you are welcomed at the table, and so we have to have the conversation: are we welcomed at the table? And are we actually trying to make a path to get to the table? Because really, that's where you make changes. I welcome protesting, I really do. However, I think we also need to be able to be part of making policy, to be at the table, to be part of the people who are going to speak, part of the people who are going to create the messages, part of the faces that are seen, right? The people who are invited to speak, right? Because when you are there speaking, some young Asian child can say, wow, that's me.
Yeah.
And that's very powerful.
And I never thought about it that way. And that's another piece of the self-awareness thing that we talked about, right? Even this conversation here now, and I thank you for it, because it's like, if my purpose in life is truly to help unlock the best in other individuals, and I'm sort of uniquely qualified just because of who I am to help a young Asian boy who may have, or girl, who may have some type of inferiority complex for being who they are, it's like I'm sort of obligated to do that.
That's powerful. That's very, very powerful. So having said that, are we going to make a concerted effort to go to our respective communities to say, hey, you matter too. Hey, you can do this too. Hey, you can create your own story. You can create your own path.
100%. I've actually, I'm in conversations with Wingstop right now, believe it or not. They're having a huge diversity and inclusion push right now. And that's actually kind of one of the first market data points where I was like, wow, okay, so there is a thing for here, because I've seen D&I speakers before, right? And the truth is this, just on my objective view and things, most of them are African-American, right? I don't really see, and maybe I just haven't seen that person like a D&I speaker in the Asian community. And I suppose just based on what I've done, there's no reason why I can't serve that particular community. So
does it involve, go ahead if you need some water. And I told myself, let me get some water. I usually have a cup of water on the side.
Yeah.
Do you think your journey will involve traveling, possibly going back to the Philippines and maybe doing a few presentations, possibly?
I would love that. A couple things. Do you know Joe Coy?
Yes.
Yeah, Joe Coy.
Bald-headed comedian.
He's a Filipino guy, right? He actually did this big Netflix special where he went back to the Philippines with the intention of inspiring Filipinos that they can make it in this particular world,
My
right?
son follows him. My son loves
Yeah,
Joe Coy.
he's like a
and
fun
and and
comedian,
and,
but like
cons-
an
and
inspirational.
honestly, I didn't even know that he was Filipino, but I just kind of,
Yeah.
I didn't even know he was Filipino. But that's awesome. So he's gone back to the Philippines. Was he born there?
I think he was born, I'm not sure where he was born, but he
Okay.
speaks Tagalog way better than I do. But that was his whole thing, was to sort of inspire Filipinos of how, of their own path, right? To sort of make them the best versions of themselves by this one particular craft. And that's why I think it's so interesting that everyone has space to do this, because it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're truly excellent at whatever it is that you do, you start to attract and connect an audience that perhaps other people can't.
So let's go back to being able to create a path for yourself, and let this be the moment for particularly tailored for young people, because you're a star. I am definitely attracted to your spirit and your motivation and your ambition. You're a trailblazer. If you were to have a class of 10th graders, 11th graders who are clueless about life, because I was clueless about life at that time. Um, I can tell you, having been in the classroom for 20 years, it's hard to tap into young people. If it's not, coming to them with music or a particular type of language, I get tuned out like as if I'm a parent all the time, which is why I take them out of the classroom and bring them into the community and say, here, Julian, you tell them that education is still important. You tell them that hard work is still important. So what would you say to young people to make them see the vision of what they can be and who they can be? And I'm telling you that, in all fairness to you, that there may not be a magical answer, because when I lived in Brazil, my mentor, full-blooded Japanese mentor, Yasuko Arakawa, she was a scientist, and she's left science now. She's also a speaker herself.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me something that I will never forget. I'll never forget. I owe lots of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich, Anthony Robbins. I own the whole library, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And she said to me that you are not going to see what you need to see if you're not ready to see it. It could be right there in front of you. You're not going to see it if you're not ready to see it. So there's some type of invisible magic out there that makes a light bulb switch on at an unpredictable time for you to be able to say, oh, okay, now this is what I need to know. So uh, 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 talk to us about what young people should be thinking about so they can have a better future, as opposed to going into a career that can wind up leaving them furloughed or unemployed.
I think first off, I have to say, just in my years of personal development and recruiting and knowing what I know, is that it's very difficult, if not impossible, to force a change in an individual. I think there's two things that you can do. Number one, you can present them with a vision of what they can become. What do they say? Without vision, you are lost. A lot of times it starts with that. It's like, oh, I can be that, right? And a lot of times it has to do with seeing someone kind of like themselves doing something cool, right? That's the first piece. The second piece is, and I don't know the scalable solution, and I have such great admiration for teachers for this, but if you can somehow tap into what that human being wants for their life and showing them how to get it, right? But for me, it really does start with the vision, and with vision comes desire. So that's sort of the what, and then the why. And all you need to do is figure out the how.
With vision comes desire.
Yeah, because you then want that thing that you just saw. And all you got to do, figure out from there, is the how. And for me, the most efficient way to figure out the how to anything is finding a mentor, is finding a teacher, is finding someone who's done what you've already wanted to do, because they can help you zig and zag and go through all the motions, what you need to do, avoid mistakes, all that. And yes, read books, watch YouTube videos, do anything that inspires you. But for me, the fastest way to extract knowledge that I can turn into plans is a conversation.
Conversation. It is a conversation. It is a conversation. I had a conversation this morning with my 12-year-old. It is a conversation brought. She ended up in tears. You know, where I come from, there weren't too much conversations. There were probably some type of slapping around and so forth.
Yeah.
But a conversation probably goes a long way and so forth. It is a conversation. Next question for you. And I'm going to tell you in advance again, it's probably an unfair question.
Sure, I'll do my best, man.
Talk to us about your views. And this is, again, your personal view. You're not talking for everybody. Talk to us about traditional schooling, because folks are going to college and they're still struggling. Folks are not going to college and they're somehow able to figure it out and they can be successful. Talk to us about your thoughts on the value of a college degree today.
So I'll say this. I recently gave a testimonial for my alma mater, the University of North Texas, and I'm grateful for all of the experiences that I had at the university, right? But I think what really starts to make a difference in everyone's life is not necessarily just the degree itself, but it's what you do outside of it. Now, from a very applicable rubber meets the road perspective, I hired hundreds of interns, right? I've hired hundreds of junior level candidates. The one distinction that I see across the board is most of them had some type of internship experience or part-time job or real application of their abilities while they went through school. So go to school, get good grades, get your degree. And if there's one thing that allowed me to do was to show me that I could set my mind to start and finish something, right? And the truth is still, corporations, depending on the kind of field that you go to, they still prefer a degree. But develop the habit of doing more than what you are asked. That was what will separate you from the competition.
Develop the habit of doing more than you are asked. And this is something that when you say you recruit, this is something that you're hoping to hear from the potential applicants, or is this something that you tell them?
I look for it. Like on a resume, I see their degree, and then I see any work experience or any internships, any recommendations, any corporations that I recognize, specific technologies that are applicable. I look for all of that, because it's one thing to say that you can program in iOS. It's another thing to show that you have apps in the App Store. How can you show your work? How can you tangibilize the results that you're claiming you can produce for the target company you're applying for? And that exists almost for everything, whether it's creative arts, for engineering, for sales, for marketing, project management, all those disciplines, you can prove it. How can you lead with credibility?
How can you lead? Listen, you're taking me to church on a Friday. Church is supposed to be for Sunday. How can you lead? I like that. How can you lead with credibility? How can you lead with credibility? And you know what? There's a little bit of this statement that's scary, because we live in a professional circle, we live in a professional world. Credibility has a lot to do with reputation and what people know of you. And if somebody says, you know what, Ted Victor robbed the bank, my credibility is gone, I'm shot. I mean, it's not true, but what people say about you has a lot of power in the professional circle. And I think that's a bit scary, right? Because people can be malicious, right? And I don't necessarily know how to circumvent that, except for just keep on doing more of the good that you can do, right?
100%, yeah. And when I'm asked to speak about personal branding, a lot of times people want me to talk about the online component because it's cool. And although I've seen it's a very useful tool to communicate your personal brand and build trust in scale and develop followers and therefore a distribution channel for your ideas, it first starts with the self. It's all the offline stuff. It's all the other things that you can use as a platform. That's your social equity. That's your relationships. That's how you treat people. It's how you've added value in the past. That is your reputation. Your personal brand is the image of your reputation. And that right there is real currency that you build and will serve you for the rest of your life.
And this thing that you do, which you've already answered, I'm just going to put it as plain as I can possibly put it. You can actually make a living off of it,
Off of
of the speaking, of the recruiting. I mean, the recruiting sounds like a traditional job, but the speaking, you can actually make a living off of that.
I'm doing it now. Yeah, through speaking, consulting, and personal development training, I make a full-time income, right?
That's amazing.
So for me, I started my business doing it part-time while I was working full-time at my last job, right? Because I believe it's important to set forth the goals that you're trying to achieve, right? It sort of gives it life the more you speak about it. Well, I always said I was going to be an entrepreneur, and I made it very public, even to my immediate supervisors, that, hey, this is what I'm doing. And I actually got special permission from my immediate manager to train my personal clients every other Friday for 6 months. That allowed me to build my curriculum, that allowed me to build competency, right? And that allowed me to test my ideas in the marketplace. And within 6 months of intentionality, I was able to replace my six-figure income doing it.
And when you say you build a curriculum, because I'm a teacher, so I know what a curriculum looks like. For example, when we're teaching science, we're going to talk about cells, we're going to talk about evolution, we're going to talk about plants. What do you decide? And this is really possibly related to my next question. What do you decide what to cover? Okay, because how do you talk about what to cover based on what you've seen or what you feel from within?
No, from the market feedback. So this is how my company started, right? So my background is in recruiting. So around 2018, I started posting these videos on LinkedIn, just giving recruiters like tips, right? Well, the first video that I posted on how to make a cold call, it got 34,000 views in 9 days. And I was like, interesting. So I started making more videos and more videos and more videos all about recruiting. What started to happen is all these recruiters from all over the country started asking me for help, telling me their training pain points, asking me for coaching and consulting. So what I did is I took what everyone was telling me, codified the most important training pain points, I turned it into a product, and I sold it into the market. And that was the genesis of my training company. And that's what allowed me to start building a career out of personal development, speaking and training and consulting. I based it based on the need. And being a recruiter myself, I know what the skills were they needed to develop to become successful.
And when you say you're a trainer, this means that you go to a company and hang out with them for a week and tell them what to do?
Yeah, it started off as live classes that I would do every other Friday. And my first program was a 3 to 6 month program where I would go to the company and I would train in small groups.
And because of the pandemic, you can now do this virtually?
I'm doing it virtually now. Yeah. Yeah. So I did BNSF logistics. I'm doing something for Southern Methodist University. I'm getting a lot of different inquiries. And what's interesting is what the market is asking me for. So it looks like I'm able to do conferences. I actually did my first speaking gig for a network marketing company, universities, and also corporations, because I have curriculum that seems to hit all of it for sort of an entry-level market and a medium-sized market and a lot of the inspirational stuff that I do, because I think that's kind of unique because I'm very grateful that I can hit all these different avenues.
Right. I don't know if you've ever met Les Brown. Have you met Les Brown?
Haven't met him. Actually, I saw him. I saw him in Dallas.
Well, I've met him several times. He comes down here, South Florida, pretty regularly. His daughter, Ona Brown, is a good friend of mine. And
Oh, wow.
Ona was there when I met Abe. And actually, she was the one leading the course. The father was just kind of background. And she taught me the value of planting seeds, and it's probably a different way of saying the pruning of the tree and so forth. And even though our conversation now, and hopefully a lifelong friendship, may not be a monetary relationship, or is not a monetary relationship, but it can possibly help us market ourselves so that we can share our natural talents with the world. And I'd like to invite you I only have like maybe just a few thousand followers, nine, probably 10,000 followers on one platform. If I were to combine all the platforms, it's probably maybe about 20,000. Not a big platform. However, these are 20,000 people who are actually paying attention, and I would invite you or whoever's on your team to please share your content on my platform.
Sure.
And I would like some of my people to reach out to you and give you business and hear your message,
Absolutely.
because even though we probably say this every year, but I do believe that we are in serious need of positive messaging.
Mhm.
We are in serious need of positive imagery. We are in serious need of positive guidance, because a lot of people are lost. A lot of people are lost. Now, having said that, and you are still a work in progress and you're developing your content, talk to us about your book, because you mentioned your book. And I'd love to be able to hear about it and get the public ready for your book. And I'd like to definitely have a copy so I can add it to my collection, because I have kids. I don't know if you have kids, and I want to be able to leave them a legacy of inspiration, of how to think, of where to go, and how to have a better life. So talk to us about your upcoming book.
So the book is in the process of being written right now, and it is certainly a passion project. And I really asked myself, if I had one message to share with the world, what would it be? And the message is that of stewardship. So I have a podcast called The Pathways to Success, right? One,
Hold on, sorry for interrupting you, Passion
sure.
Project. Um, you did define it. How would you say stewardship is different or similar to mentorship or mentoring?
I think that certainly can be part of one's gifts that they can steward, but stewardship is an individual path to find your own unique pathway to success. And that is through the discovery, the deployment, and development of our talents and our resources to serve and create value for others. That
Discovery, discovery,
discovery, deployment, meaning the application of, and
deployment.
development, growing your ability to use your talents,
There are three of them: discovery, deployment, and
develop,
development.
to
Deployment and development. Okay,
deployment, develop, to serve and create value for others.
got it.
I don't think there's a single person in the world who could ever claim that they were successful without helping someone else. And that's not just an altruistic thing. That's business, right? Why
Mhm.
does someone get paid for a job? It is because they're offering a commensurate value. Why does a company make a lot of money? It's because their value is highly scalable and they can create profits, right? A lot of times stewardship is used in a philanthropic sense, which it is. And that is where I first got my foundation of the word. But through volunteering my times and my talents to help specific philanthropic causes, I started to see abilities that grew out of me that I was able to apply for for-profit causes, specifically speaking.
When will the book be out?
That is in the process right now. So here's I want to be very honest, right? So right now I'm evaluating two things: self-publishing and traditionally published, right? My aim is to get traditionally published as a first-time author. Because of that, I am now looking for mentors who have done that. So I'll actually put that out right now. If anyone who is watching, who has been traditionally published, who has heard my message and could potentially put me in contact with a book agent who likes this message, I would love that opportunity. And that is
Regina,
what I'm asking.
Regina King is an agent. She's a book agent. She's a friend of mine, and it's hard for me to get in touch with her. When I call her, I reach her like maybe twice a year, and she's somebody I would like for you to meet.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I'd like to write a book as well. So, what is your process? Do you have a pad, or do you walk around with a little audio message device? What is your process?
So I have failed at writing a book. Here's why.
I appreciate your honesty.
Look, here's the truth, Ted, because I can't sit in my office and bang out text. It's just not my natural form of content creation, right? But I do have the main points, the lessons I'm trying to instruct. So now I'm trying to create content the way that I organically do it. So I'm actually blogging about it. You can follow my stewardship journey on LinkedIn. And I'm talking about how I'm writing the book. And it's through conversations like this. I'm revisiting a lot of podcast guests that I've had on the podcast that can spell out the message of stewardship by their stories. So I have the main ideas. Now I'm capturing stories that illustrate the points. That has been my process. And that is working way better than just sitting in a room bagging out text, because I need to wrestle with the ideas. I need to get different perspectives. I need to be inspired. It needs to be real. I need to feel it, you know? And I do that with other people. If you haven't guessed already, I lean towards extroversion. I get energy from people who inspire me. And that's when I make the best content.
Oh yeah. So in other words, you're definitely a part of your environment. So I totally understand that. So how does this get translated to become on paper?
Well, I think for one, I mean, the great thing is that we're capturing this. This is recorded some way, somehow, right? So it can be transcribed. You can
Okay.
go back for notes. I make a lot of little clips of things that I do like this as promotional material to get my stuff out there. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use it to your advantage.
So I'm going to give you a little pearl out of context, but it still works.
Sure.
When I thrive on talking to people. I am so socially thirsty. I can't. I had to Zoom. So in order to survive. So I'm interviewing people. I look for professionals to inspire my students. And there was this judge. Her name is, and I don't think she would mind me sharing her name because what I'm about to tell you, I think is pretty powerful. Her name is Judge Tarlika Navarro. She is a judge here in Broward County. And I, paid money out of my own pocket, paid for a bus to bring students to her courtroom so they can hear her journey as a Hispanic judge, as a female judge, inspire to be her, to do like her. And she just kept on avoiding. She said all the nice things, but I kept on saying, well, what's your journey? What's your story? She avoided talking about herself. And I interviewed her. After interviewing her live, I interviewed her on Zoom, and there weren't students physically in front of her. So it was just her and the camera. And I asked her the question again, talk to us about your journey, Judge Navarro. And then finally she said it, she said, well, Ted, I just want you to know, I'm supposed to be an inspiration to these kids. You have them here. I was not a good student. And I said, what do you mean you weren't a good student? How could you not be a good student? You're a judge. You have a very powerful position in society. And she said to me something I will never forget, and I will definitely put it in my book, and I will quote her. She said, Ted, I have a master's degree in failing, a master's degree in failing, but a PhD in getting up.
Oh, I like that. You got a
I said,
credit up there, 100%. Wow, that's
I
great.
said, I said, what? She said she failed out of school. She was kicked out. And then she just had to work and went back into school. She was readmitted part-time. And then she just kept on trying and trying. And then she eventually got to where she got. She probably graduated at the bottom of her class, but she's a judge today. And she said, I just was not, she said, it was just hard for me to be like all the smart kids and be so focused. She said, I have a master's degree in failure, and a PhD in getting up.
That's so good. So good. So good.
Julian, I was like, what? What? I wrote that down. She gave me chills.
Yeah.
Tell me that's not powerful. Tell me that's not powerful. So
Great. Yeah.
your thought of being able to use this avenue to create content for the book is a wonderful idea. Wonderful idea. Because I don't know if I'd be able to sit down and write notes either. I mean, I have some notes that are jotted here, but yes, it was a wonderful idea. Wonderful idea. And I mean, I don't know if you've experienced failure before. And there was a time in this country where you and I did not have the right to even go to school. We were not welcomed and so forth. But yet here we are. So talk about overcoming obstacles.
So as far as the failure piece, okay. So when I graduated from college in 2005, right, I was actually very arrogant and very overconfident because I had built, by the time that I graduated, a very successful career in the retail world. I don't know if you remember the technology retailer CompUSA.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a competitor to Best Buy, right? Well, I used to run the service centers for that CompUSA. And my stores always operated in the top 5-10% in terms of profitability and efficiency. So I had 6 years of retail, 3 years of management, 2 years of training, technical certifications, and now a bachelor's degree in business administration. Mm-hmm. And I thought that once I'd start applying to corporate jobs, companies would just roll out the red carpet for me, right?
Right.
In 8 months, I was rejected 37 times in a row. I lost my identity. I was the young, successful kid who was supposed to take over the world. And here I was going out applying into the market, and no one wanted me. But throughout this process, I was learning how to shake hands, how to make eye contact, how to follow up in an interview. I was learning this process of how to find a job. And then what happened? The company that made me an offer was a company called Robert Half International, one of the oldest and largest staffing firms in the world. So instead of spending every waking hour of my day trying to find a job, I built a career out of helping others. And now I'm grateful to say I've positively impacted thousands. So you see, adversity sometimes, at least in my case, seems to literally be preparing you for what's coming next.
But you gotta, it's powerful stuff, powerful stuff. But you gotta talk a little bit about that inner voice. You're not good enough. Nobody wants you. 38 times, 32 times failure, reject. There's gotta be some element inside of you that says, damn, what's going on? Am I as good as I thought I was?
So I actually did a talk on confidence here most recently. And it's my personal, from my own experience, confidence, it comes from competence. By getting good at something and having the
confidence. You're taking me to church on a Friday. Confidence comes from competence.
No.
Confidence
comes from competence.
comes
right?
from competence.
By getting good at something, it's developing a skill. And that's why I'm really big into identifying your talents, because you can start to develop skills within your talents much faster than someone who's not particularly gifted, right? So check this out. I remember the first paid speech I ever got. It was $50. And I was paranoid. I was like, oh my gosh, 50 times 2080, that's 100K a year. I better give 100K performance, this, and this, all this mindset, right? My last, and I wasn't worthy, right? But my last keynote that happened in February, I was paid $10,000 to keynote a conference. And by that time, I embraced it. I was like, finally, of course, this absolutely makes sense, because I knew I was good, because not just because I was good, because I knew I could help, right? With my message, with my story, I paid
you could deliver. You could deliver.
Right? My confidence came from competence by doing it over and over and over again. I've given over 350 speeches, right? I probably gave, I don't know, maybe 300 free ones before I ever got my first paid speech, right? It's something that I was doing for free already, and I'll continue to do for free, right? But my confidence as a speaker came from my competence. I built skill around my talent.
I hear that. Giving me goosebumps. Okay, so out of respect for your time, I'm looking at this. We're up on an hour. Julian Placino, I'm going to remind you that I would like for us to continue a long friendship. I would like for us to continue to inspire others. I do believe that it is our duty to make this world a better place for the rest of humanity. I do believe that, especially if you are given certain talents and so forth. I am thankful to the universe for us having Abe as a common friend, and I'm going to post this video on his platform. And Abe, this is a shout out to you. Thank you for being awesome and so forth. And I'd like to see you again. It could be next week. It could be next year. Yeah. I'd like to be able to hear the development, because one of the things that I'd like to do is still work on me believing of having value, to having something valuable to say. I'm just thinking that, well, why would anybody want to listen to me? Because anybody can say what I'm saying, right? But I guess we are a product of our experiences. We each have unique talents and so forth. And the fact that I speak 5 languages, I want to be able to do this. And I've already started. And the one talk, the one presentation, or the one Zoom conference I had with Uruguay, there are 28,000 views. And there's the one I did in Brazil has 30,000 views. And so in Portuguese. So, and I'm still thinking, I'm like, is this really a thing? Is this really a thing? Because I'm thinking that, you know what, my language has to become even more sophisticated in French for me to go further. I had to be even more sophisticated in Spanish to go even further. But yet, I'm working at it. I'm doing it. I'm consistently looking for people to talk to, and leaders like yourself, motivate me even more. So I need that vitamin. I need that feedback, even though you're far away, but virtually we're connected. I'm going to look at these notes and I'm going to research some of what you said, and I'm going to become a better me as a result. So there isn't even a monetary value I can give to that. I'm just forever thankful, and I thank you. And if there's anything I can do in South Florida to welcome you when you come here and to introduce you to people, I owe you. I'm indebted to you, and thank you so very much.
I really enjoyed it, Ted. I'm sure we'll be friends from here on out. And if there's anything else I could do to support you, any of your organizations or your platform, you let me know.
I thank you so very much. Well, there you have it, social media land. This is Ted Victor again, signing out with wonderful personal development trainer, Julian Placino. Julian, remind me again, what state are you in again?
I'm in Texas.
You're still in Texas, and it's Texas. There's NPR is talking a lot about the uptick of COVID down there. So I hope you remain safe. I've lost 4 family members as a result of the pandemic.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yes, and I had some others in the hospital that did make it out alive. So I'm hoping that you and your family have will remain safe. At first, I didn't really want to believe in this pandemic, but it is very real. And I pray that you and all of your loved ones remain safe. Okay.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you so very much, Social Media Man. And please share this with all of your friends and family members. 100%. And I look forward to seeing you at the next conversation here at the Broad Social Network. Julian, may the heavens and the universe bless you forever. And thank you for the good that you are doing for humanity.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.